From getting the Toronto crowd to chant against Mayweather, to telling Eddie Alvarez that he'd TKO his face unrecognizable. Here are some of the most iconic trash talk moments of Conor McGregor, starting with one of his earlier targets, Chad Mendes, going into UFC 189.
Front row, yeah. I'm not even in the Fighters Hotel. I'm in the Fertitta Hotel, yeah, in the suite on the Copacabana. So you enjoy your time in the Fighter Hotel.
The Notorious had the interim featherweight belt on the line, and the press conference before the match saw the two fighters exchange in a war of words. Keep in mind that McGregor at the time was yet to achieve what he had, so his hunger to succeed was on another level. By now, everyone who knows Conor knows that he goes into each fight with a superior mentality to his opponent. He's mentally won the bout already, and the added pressure on his opponents mostly plays out in his favor. Following his very own strategy, McGregor started calling Mendes out for his friendship with Jose Aldo and implying that the American fighter was a scared animal. He went on and took a dig at his strikes and his wrestling ability, saying that his combinations aren't predictable. He legit said the best Mendes can do is throw an overhand right, close his eyes, and shoot a takedown. Imagine hearing that before one of your biggest fights. And when he got asked about the intensity of Mendes, Conor straight up made fun of his cardio, and it's not a surprise to anyone, but his trash talks do work. McGregor won his first UFC world title in that fight by TKO in 2 rounds. Chad Mendes had no chance against him. While Mendes was defeated in the pre-match confrontation, it took Conor a rematch to get it done with Nate Diaz. One could argue that it was a tale of 2 matches, but the trash talk battle had no competition.
I make a lot more than everybody else. Yeah, a lot more than his last one, that is. He can thank me for that one. I don't know him. Anything over 40 grand he owes me, because that was his last paycheck. I wiped my.
The fight between the Notorious and Diaz was highly anticipated, mainly because McGregor was moving up 2 weight classes just to match the American, and the fight was called for suddenly after his previous opponent backed out due to injury. The fight didn't particularly go according to Conor's plan, but he was quick to ask for a rematch. Let's just say he talked his way into one, though it wasn't as great as the trash talk that took place before the original fight. At UFC 196, McGregor went all in for the American. He ended up equating him to a cholo gangster from the hood, and before that, he took shots at him with the fact that Diaz also tried to exit the fight, and that he cried over making weight. It was eventually the Irishman that had to gain, along with the gangster comment. He added that Diaz coaches Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to kids, and goes on bike rides with the elderly. Conor went as far as to make gun signs with his hands, and whatnot, to get under his skin. It was a bloodbath of words from the Irishman. Diaz, on the other hand, was more experienced and kept his calm. He spoke few but impactful words and showed his cards in the fight. Even though he won in the ring, no one can disagree that McGregor won outside of it. Soon after this, it was Jeremy Stephens that got grilled by the Irishman. After avenging his loss to Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor had his sights set on Jeremy Stephens.
I don't know, when I take that guy's belt, leprechaun. Oh, good one. When I take that guy's belt, I'm looking around, I don't know what anyone else has for me around here. I might have to jump up and fucking drag Floyd Mayweather out of bed and see what the fuck.
The pre-fight presser had one of the most iconic moments in McGregor's history. When asked by a reporter who he considers his toughest fight on stage, McGregor took a while before he could reply. But before he said anything, Jeremy interfered and answered the question himself. Jeremy said that he'd be McGregor's hardest fight. The Irishman turned his head to both sides to show he didn't get who was speaking. He grabbed his mic and gave the classic one-liner. Who the f*** is that guy? No matter what Stephens said after that, it was too late. The crowd was worked up, and even he himself knew that he was done. He did attempt a comeback later on, when a picture was posted on Twitter where Jeremy was seen with McGregor's mom, but the efforts to get at the Irishman were made too late. McGregor is ready to have a verbal battle with anyone, anywhere, anytime. And though Stephens failed, Eddie Alvarez made sure to go toe-to-toe with the Irishman. There was a lot of heat going into UFC 205.
He got it done by signing his last contract. He didn't even negotiate new money for himself. Imagine that. Look at everybody up here. They're all dressed like me. They're all trying to talk like me. They're all trying to be me.
and that showed that both fighters were confident in their ability to take down the other. Conor was fighting for the lightweight strap to become the first dual title holder in UFC history. He went on and intimidated Eddie, saying that he's gonna toy with him. The guy legit said that after the fight, Alvarez's family won't recognize him because of how different he'll look. Yikes! That's a lot! And the best of them all was when he said that he'll make sure to retire Eddie in this fight. Now, if you're a fighter, this is absolutely not what you want to hear. But hey, it's part of the game and a mentality test which McGregor's been winning for quite a while. No matter the opponent, the Irishman has an advantage going into the fight because of the things he says to their face. Alvarez went defensive in his comments, saying that his focus will be on humbling the Irishman. Say whatever you want, but this was really one of the best trash talks that McGregor's been part of. He didn't leave any opportunity. The Irishman made a ridiculous prediction of KOing Alvarez in the first round, even commented on his movement, his shot selection, and his family. One could argue that this just gives more fuel to the opponent, wanting to defeat McGregor with extra hunger in them. But on the flip side, not everyone gets affected by what the charismatic Irishman says, and it's not easy to get in the head of Floyd Mayweather. Everyone was blown away when the fight between Money and the Irishman was announced.
On the count of 3, I want everyone in this arena to scream at the top of your lungs, "F the Mayweathers." 1, 2, 3.
And with McGregor's reputation of being a notorious trash talker, the fans were anticipating their press conferences and verbal exchanges. In the whole world tour, the Toronto presser was rather a special one. Despite Floyd being the bigger athlete, McGregor stole the show that night. He went on to convince the Canadian crowd to chant "Fuck the Mayweathers" all over. But Money was such an experienced fighter, he'd come prepared for all of this. He knew that his specialty was inside the ring. This incident got McGregor and his trash talks the global recognition they deserve. But he had to live up to his words while fighting one of the greatest boxers. He had no boxing experience, but had made big commitments. Rational fans knew that Floyd was in the clear, and they were right. The fight wasn't anywhere near what the Irishman had promised. He started energetically, but then gave in to Mayweather's technique and style. Money was just better than him that night. But McGregor has shown time and time again that he's one of the best in the business when it comes to MMA, and Jose Aldo is a prime example of that. The Brazilian was the featherweight champ going into the bout with Conor, but the Irishman's words prior to the fight got into his head. Despite being the underdog, McGregor went on to predict that he'd KO Jose in the first round. He made fun of his movements and his overreaction in certain situations, and to everyone's surprise, the result was exactly that. Jose Aldo was knocked out in 13 seconds. Aldo overextended his punch, and McGregor capitalized it with that hammer of a left hand. And just like that, the Irishman was the featherweight champion. McGregor went into the fight mentally 10 times stronger than the Brazilian, and he'd done half of his job before the fight. That'll be all on Conor McGregor's most iconic trash talk moments.